We go now to our Zambia market update. Mbaita Maka is a broker at African Alliance Securities in Zambia. Good morning, Mbaita. Let's look at your Zambian market overall. The index has been trading 3691, down almost 10% in the year to date. So what's the background to that decline?
Well, in terms of background, this has been something that has happened since last year's election. We find that liquidity in the market has been less and less. And this essentially is being priced into the stocks, and we find that the index has declined. More recently, we found that one of the larger counters, ZANE, has dipped over 8%. And this is also largely attributed to the decline in the index.
Right, and there are also plans to rebase the currency. How's that going to affect trading, and what will be the extent of the rebasing? Because sometimes there are unintended consequences when reserve banks or governors do that.
Yes, well, technically speaking, the rebasing of the currency isn't going to have any effect on the underlying shares and on the underlying trading in the market. But we do find that with shares that are trading at less than 10 KWACHA currently, and that is Standard Chartered Bank and KAVMONT, we find that those will have to be consolidated in some way, because after the rebasing, they'll be denominated at less than 1 ngwe, which is not possible. So essentially, shares like Standard Chartered and KAVMONT will have to look into consolidating their number of shares in issue so that after the rebasing, there's no effect on their ability to trade. But other than that, there shouldn't be any effect on the other shares.
I mean, put simply for the layman, they're knocking how many noughts off the currency? That's what in effect they're doing, aren't they?
They're knocking 3 noughts off the currency. Okay. So if a stock is currently trading at 1,000 KWACHA, it will be trading at 1 KWACHA, right? Essentially speaking. Yes.
I was in
so for Standard Chartered, yes.
Okay, sorry.
Yes, David?
I was in Zambia a few weeks ago, and I was struck by the appetite for growth, the appetite for new businesses starting up. There was a sense, certainly in Lusaka where I was, of opportunities and growth. Is the stock exchange reflecting this, given your earlier comments about the decline? I mean, if there's a growth story in Africa and in Zambia, there must be investors who are picking up on this.
Yes. Well, unfortunately, the pickup, the transition of this growth isn't really being filtered into the stock exchange at the moment. We have found that liquidity is going down, but I suppose that's generally because there tends to be a lag with these sorts of things, I would think. I would think at some point this would be reflected in trading, and when that will be is essentially what the pertinent question is.
You were going to say, when I interrupted you a moment ago because of the delay there, something about Standard and Chartered, and perhaps what you were going to say about that, and then also just to talk about who are the big value traders on the exchange at the moment, who's gained the most, who's lost the most?
Okay, well, StanChat has lost quite a bit of value year to date. It would probably be the biggest decliner of the shares. ZANE, as I mentioned, has declined quite a bit of its value year to date as well. But if I talk more recently in the current week, we see that Zambia Sugar is probably one of the bigger gainers in the last week. It's gained about 1.9%. It's currently trading at 265 KWACHA. British American Tobacco has gained about 0.5% in the last week. The decliners, as I mentioned, Standard Chartered, ZANE, there are quite a few. But in the last week, I would say CEC has declined about 1.8%. It's currently trading at 648 KWACHA. And yes, that wraps up what has really been happening in the last week. And then in terms of value trading, most of the trades in the last week have been in Zambia Sugar. About 3/4 of the value traded, which comes up to about 940 million KWACHA, has been in Zambia Sugar, even though there have been smaller trades in counters like Zanaco, British American Tobacco, Zambeef, and CC.